Going.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. And it is time to talk about getting angry, which I never do. I'm perfectly calm at all times, in every weather, no matter what happens. I never throw things across the room and yell. So I guess that's about it for this video then, so we can move on. Well, if you notice, my wife's down there trying not to laugh. But yeah, no, if any of you are patrons or members and we're watching, today we were doing a build with Luke in here, and I was working on a project that was just, it was problem after problem after problem after problem, and I was getting really frustrated to the point that the two of us just said, let's just call it a day. Because things are going well. So that's what actually brought this topic on. I was going to talk about fluffy little dovetails or something like that, but let's talk about something a little more serious. Or have a little bit of fun in the shop. For those of you who are new to the Wood by Wright Lives, we do this every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, and we have a live group in the chat. We do a bunch of interesting, fun things that are normally only done in the lives, and we do different things. So if you are watching this recorded, down in the description down below there is a link of all the questions that are asked throughout the video, as well as timestamps beside them, so you can quickly read through them and see if you want to jump to something. And someone just super chatted. So I don't know who it is.
Oh, Sumi. Oh man, Sumi.
But if you are watching this, live, throw your chats in the chat. Throw your questions in the chat. Throw your chats in the question, and we'll answer as many of those as we can. But mostly, what we'll do is we'll start at the beginning of it with around the topic, and then it slowly devolves into a Q&A, depending upon how long the topic actually goes. But for those of you super chat, you do get a mom joke, which she's still looking for.
Unfortunately, Sarah's literally gone from work to home to grandparents to live. So
yeah, she's been.
I owe you a mom joke, Sumi. Give me a moment.
All over the place today. So let me take this time. I was actually working on. Here it is. We're working on a set of pinch rods from Reed Planes. He created a plans. As well as he's planning on offering a kit to sell all the hardware for it. And it's a really, really cool design. The problem is it would be very easy to make with power tools, but with hand tools it is incredibly difficult. And so we're trying a bunch of different things, but that means working with very small sticks of wood and planing very accurate angles on them. And I've been having all sorts of issues holding them at the angle to plane them. And no matter what I do, they rotate, or the plane, have settings on that, was having problems. And we probably spent about 2 hours just trying everything to make those work, and finally just giving up and saying that's it for the day. And I was getting incredibly frustrated, and it is worthwhile to learn when you're getting frustrated and to just stop and walk away. That's actually a really good skill that I wish I were better at. Yeah, so that's what brought this whole thing on. A totally disastrous day in the shop. And for those of you who are patrons or members, you can actually go watch that. As we have it was, 3 hours of well, the first hour and a half, 2 hours were really good, and then it just kind of devolved into mayhem of stupidity. It was a very interesting day.
All right.
So we got a super chat.
I got a mom joke.
Mom joke. What do we got?
How does a computer get drunk?
How does a computer get drunk? What?
It takes screenshots.
Yeah, screenshots. I like that one. Oh, before I forget, I should have mentioned this earlier. I'm going to be at the MWTCA meet this weekend, which is just outside of Indianapolis. So if any of you are going to be there, I'm looking forward to seeing you. It should be a fun one. I got to get up really early, drive 6 hours there, be there for the 2 to 3 hours of the meet, and then drive 6 hours back. So it should be a really fun day. And then 2 weeks after that, at the end of this month, we'll have the meet that's just a couple miles away from my house. So I'm really looking forward to that one. That's one that I co-host. So yes, lots of fun to come. Looking forward to seeing you. So, anger management.
I'm sorry.
Anger management. Yeah, I wanted to be talking about this. If you are a woodworker,
I love you.
if you are a woodworker, you have run into the problems where something breaks, something doesn't go right, something doesn't go to plan, and that piece just won't work, and now it's totally destroyed, and you've wasted hours and hours in the shop. And sure, shooting, it's some final finishing detail that ends up destroying an entire piece that you've been working on for weeks. And yeah, it's really easy to throw things across the shop, and especially with these small sticks, they just weren't satisfying to throw. So I didn't end up throwing them because, well, it just doesn't feel good. But I've had a few projects that have ended up as airborne missiles. The biggest thing that I have been trying to learn, and yeah, I'm still learning this, is being able to notice when you have that mental issue and being able to say, okay, let's stop, let's walk away, let's do something else. And in the past, the best thing that has worked for me is I usually have 7, 8 projects in the shop. Like I have a video coming up with 1, 2, 3 blocks working on the pinch rods. I have these bike bottle holders. I have the handle for the hand tool rescue. I've got a plane that I'm working on. I've got to silence my phone. I usually have a bunch of projects in the shop. And there's always the next project. And when I find myself getting frustrated on one, I'll stop, go do something else for 5 or 6 minutes, and then I'll come back to a different project. And I find that if I let it go and try not to sing the song, that my brain just works on it in the background. And usually I'll wake up at like 3 a.m. just wide awake and be like, oh, I know how I'll do it. And that's the way it works. And I usually try not to wake my wife up when I find that. But you will never fix the problem when you're frustrated. The frustration is a great energy to get something done, but it's usually to get something destructive done. And if you can stop and give yourself time to think about it, it's amazing how those problems have a tendency to work their way off. And one of the greatest bonuses I've found is a lot of times when you ding up that piece of work and it's starting to fall apart on you and you've got this thing that has splintered off and broken on you when it shouldn't have, sometimes that's the greatest opportunity to do something special, to do something a little different, to put in that accent piece. Like when I was making the, well, here, let me grab it, the first aid kit. I've got all these holes in here. I decided to fill some of them and others I didn't. And putting this band along the bottom to hide the holes actually works out really, really well. And it was something I wouldn't have ever done before unless I was trying to fix something. And having those little accent things can often be a huge benefit. And you're never going to get those unless you get into those hard points. But all that being said, the most important thing I've found is being able to read yourself and know when you're going to be doing it. What are the things that trigger it? And for me, the biggest thing that triggers it is food, or particularly the lack thereof. I'm very, very hangry quite often. And as soon as I get one bite of something, that Snickers commercial is very accurate. So, yeah. Yeah, anger in the shop is an interesting thing. Any questions or thoughts or things, people saying things I should know before?
That are immediate no, that we eventually will get to yes.
Cool. The biggest thing I have found is being able to think of what's in your brain and saying, not why is this angering me, because the fact that it's angering me means you're not going to be able to work on that anymore. But being able to say, okay, I am currently angry about this. How or what is something that I can do differently that I will not be angry about, and particularly something that I find joy in. And usually that means leave this project, get rid of it, and find something else. And I need to be thinking about, okay, what project out there is something I want to get into. Putting these handles on is something I'm really getting excited about. And I probably would have jumped into that if I hadn't. This just came in the mail after the video session. I had several other projects that I could have jumped into, but today we found out that I was having all sorts of issues with it, and there wasn't another project I could jump into, at least not with Luke here and videoing it. I didn't have anything ready to video the next steps. And so I found that in that case, it's better to just back off, leave it alone, go do something else. Because if I kept working at it, I'm going to end up destroying something, or I'm going to end up hurting a friendship of someone here in the shop who's with me. And that is a lesson I've had to learn several times the hard way. You almost always regret the actions you take when you're angry. And yeah, it's a good lesson to learn. And I wish someday I learned that lesson. Now I'm off on a tangent. I forgot where I was going with this. Okay, yeah, types of problems. Okay, so the most common thing is your rushing. At least this is for me. Is when I don't have a deadline, when I'm in the shop for fun, then I tend to not have problems because I'm willing to spend a little bit more time to detail this item. I'm willing to spend a little bit more time to fiddle around with this. And when I'm having fun in the shop, I'm making less mistakes. And my mental, I'm happy. I'm not going to be as angry when I'm happy, and things work out well. Usually the problems come when I'm rushed. I've got a video on Saturday and I've got to get this project done. That's when problems come about. And I found that if I find myself rushing, or if I have a deadline, I need to tell myself ahead of time, there's probably going to be some issue with this. How am I going to work around that? How am I going to have another project ready to step in for it? What am I going to do? What are my options? So if I have a deadline, or something's pushing my timeline, something's coming up and I have to get this done now, I have to understand that there's probably going to be something that stops me from it. Is that another super chat?
It is.
Paul, thank you.
Yes, Paul Allen says, for the Wooza Fund.
What's the Wooza Fund?
I don't know, you must have made a noise.
Oh, yes, I always make noise. So when I'm rushing, I'm usually going to make mistakes. One of the biggest things for that is saws. I have ruined more things with a saw because I'm rushing. Because when I'm rushing, I want to get it done faster. And that means I need to put more force into the saw. And when you put force into the saw bends. And when the saw bends, it puts stress on the joint and something splits off. And you just broke the piece because you were rushing to get it done. Using a saw, a well-tuned, well-set-up saw, will work under its own weight, will work under its own pressure. And when you're cutting with the saw, your arm should not be forcing the saw teeth down into the work. It should be sliding across the top with its own weight holding it down. And I found that if I'm pushing and I'm forcing because I'm trying to speed up, that's going to be probably the most common mistake. The next one is one that came across today, planing. If I'm rushing, I have a tendency to, let's just set it a little bit deeper so that I can go through it a little faster. Thicker shavings, quicker work. Yeah, marching through it a little faster. But number one, it's going to be dulling the blade faster. Number two, there's a pretty good chance because I'm taking a thicker shaving, I'm going to go right past my line. And now I have a piece that is too thin. And that starts to drive things. Yeah, pretty much everything you do, if you do it faster, you're going to end up with problems. And that's one of the things that I have learned more than anything else with hand tools. You know, with power tools, you do things faster. You're probably going to make more mistakes, but you're also going to be far more dangerous. And so you pick up hand tools thinking, I'm going to slow down, relax, and enjoy it. But you still get to that point where you just got to get it done. You've got to get faster, and then you run into problems, and everything falls apart on you. So I would, if I wasn't making videos, I would make it a rule in my shop that I don't make anything unless I have enough time to do it with the problems that might come about. I don't have a deadline for it. And I think that would fix probably about 90% of my issues, things that go wrong and things that break apart on me. Yeah, it's usually when there's a video coming up and I got to have something out for Saturday, and then everything falls apart. Not happy. Carving. Oh my word.
You do know that Paul has not gotten his mom's.
Oh, sorry, I've been talking. I've got a string of ideas in my brain that I want to talk through here, but
I'll be quick.
No, what do you got?
Why do astronauts use Linux
Why do astronauts use Linux?
or Linux, however you say it?
Linux. What?
Because you can't open windows in space.
Good point. Yes. When carving.
Yes.
When working with chisels, I find that I get more cuts, more accidental, whoops, it goes past into the wood anytime I'm rushing. If I have time to slow down, then I tend to not make mistakes as much. And I think that's one of the things I really need to work on more, is just being able to relax and slow down, which sounds kind of odd coming from a hand tool guy, but there's still that skill that needs to be learned of I can go even slower. And that's a good thing. And I think another problem that I've had that also goes along, and it's kind of the opposite side of rushing, is that when I really get excited, particularly towards the end of a project, when the finish is getting ready to go on, and I'm doing that final smoothing, I'm doing the final details, I start to speed things up. And you'll often notice that my hands in videos get really, really shaky when I start to get to the details, because I'm getting excited and this is really fun. And then I start to speed up and oops, I ruined that piece. So I've had a few times where the fun has gotten into it. But usually if my mindset is in that moment and I'm having fun and I'm getting ready for it and I'm getting excited, I'm usually not going to get angry at that moment. But I am going to have more work to do. So yeah, those come along. What are the thoughts or questions so far?
Let's see. Sorry, I was trying to get ahead of my mom jokes just so I was ready.
Before you do that, I'd love to hear from you guys. What are the things that actually trigger you, and how do you come about fixing those? That'd be an interesting thing to actually compile. Sorry.
Maybe chew your tongue or something.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things you never notice until you actually turn a camera on you is when I get excited, my hands really shake. And I never notice it in person because I'm the one using the tools. I don't notice my shaking, but if I watch a video, I'll notice my hands going all over the place. It's like, what's up with that?
Should I tell him the thing that you do when you're thinking about things, that it can be really creepy if you don't know you're doing it?
What?
His eyes will dart back and
around?
forth. It almost looks like he's having a seizure. Like, it's the creepiest thing. He'll stare off and just dart his eyes back and forth. If you ever see him do that, he's thinking, and he's not going to hear a single thing you're saying until he's done.
That's actually a sign of a dyslexic person, is that the mind is a physical space. And so if you're thinking, your eyes are going all over. The head isn't moving, but the eyes are moving around through your thoughts.
Oh, your head moves a little bit. But anyways, it's still really creepy to see the first couple of times. Anyways, okay, let's talk about anger management questions first. Let's see. Warren from earlier today. Is it true that the biggest catastrophe ever to have occurred in James's shop is that he ran out of white oak?
Thankfully, so far, since the day I first brought white oak in the shop, I've never been out of white oak, which is kind of cool. Though I'm going to be going to the store this next week and buying more white oak. So yes. That's a good one. Yeah. What's that?
Okay, it's not a question, but I don't know if you talk about, but other people coming in the shop, or like children, like how do you work around those kind of interruptions of sorts?
That's actually a really a difficult one for me, because I'm a stay-at-home dad and I teach homeschool. So I'll be in the shop working, and then a kid pops in and it's like, "Daddy, I got this," and I'm like, okay, and I have to stop and change my process, and then I get right back into woodworking, and 30 seconds later, "Daddy, what?" The distractions are huge, and I've had several times where I have had to stop what I'm doing and go do something else until my brain settles down to the point I can actually come back and focus on it. Yeah, actually, one of the things I've been doing recently is when I plan out my day of the things I'm planning on doing, I will work on processes. Like I need to rip down, like these boards, I need to rip down 3/4 by 3/16 by 4 foot long. And then I need to cut it into pieces. And then I need to cut those pieces into little pieces. And I need to cut those into little pieces. And then I need to put an angle on those pieces. And then I need to cut those into little pieces. And so rather than doing it one after another, I would find 2 or 3 steps. And I'd do those 2 or 3 steps. And then I'd set it down. And I'd go do something else. I'd watch a YouTube video. I would edit something. I would answer an email. And then I'd come back and I'd do 2 or 3 more steps. And I find that taking those breaks strategically throughout the day and changing from one project to another actually helped me focus more on what I had, and allowed me to get that slowdown rather than I've got to rush through this and get it done. So actually scheduling in, a 5-minute break to go do something else, and a lot of times that is checking on the kids and bringing them to do something. Yeah, and if I had a power tool shop, it would be even more important because getting distracted with power tools can be interesting. I've had several big accidents with power tools. I can't say I haven't. My biggest with hand tools, I had an 1.5-inch chisel jab into my hand. It fell off the bench and I reached down to grab it.
Don't recommend.
My hand went down faster than the chisel did, and the chisel caught up and stabbed right into my arm. Thankfully, it was just a wad of gauze and duct tape, and it was as good as new in a couple weeks.
How about the angle grinder too?
Yeah, I had an angle grinder that we had a steel rod going into concrete, and I was cutting it off flush. And it was grinding in. We actually had a 12-inch disc on an angle grinder, so my knuckles are only, an inch away from this spinning disc, and I'm cutting into it, and it catches it, bounces back at me while I'm kneeling on the concrete, and it grinds into my kneecap. That was a fun one. And, my father grabbed a spinning router bit once, not on purpose, but that didn't end well.
I don't think I've heard that story.
What's that?
I don't think I've heard that story.
My brother had to have stitches several times for slicing his hand up with an X-Acto knife. I think it was 3 times he sliced his hand with an X-Acto knife. My brother had more stitches than I could shake a stick at. But yeah. What's the next one?
All right, let's see. I'm trying to look at questions that are like just woodworking versus totally related, or do you just want me to just ask them as they've come? Do you want to stay more on topic?
I'm willing to flex this one. This is a rather small topic. It was one of those things that this wasn't the topic I was originally planning on doing today, but after running into a lot of it today, it was one of those things I spent a lot of time thinking through it, and I kind of wanted to talk philosophy. So it's a little bit lighter,
you wanted
smaller
to
topic.
wax elephants.
I like waxing elephants, yes.
Okay, hang on. Let me see what I have related to the topic. Okay, so when you're getting frustrated and you're rushing to get videos done, Nicholas Todd wants to know, do you keep videos in the can in case you have a project that's not quite ready?
I often try to work ahead and have videos in the can. But very rarely am able to. That's something that is, I haven't been able to do that well. No, usually what happens, if it's a Thursday video, it's a little easier because usually those are much, much quicker and easier to make. And with those videos, most of the time, I have to have a video done and I don't have anything right now, those videos do well. The dumb videos where I just talk about something and show it off, those videos do well, and I don't understand why. But very rarely do I have anything in the can. On the Saturday videos, it's I've had a couple times where I've been down to the wire and actually working on something right up until the moment I upload it. Saturday videos are project builds. When I get into doing furniture, usually what I'll do is I'm just constantly working on the furniture, and once I get up to the point I have enough for a video, then I'll throw that into the Saturday videos. And then I'm always doing the regular smaller projects in between, and so I always have one of those that I can fit into. Or I've gotten this far, I guess that's where we're making the video. It's often what happens with the two parts, would like to make it all in one, but ran out of time. So we're going to finish it the next week. But most things, because the way I work with Luke, Luke lives about an hour away from here. So he drives down once every other week normally. And so we spend one day videoing everything for the next 2 weeks. And so that means I need to have everything set up. And so I do a lot of the baking process of, now we need to glue this up. We clamp it all up and, oh look, here's one that's all glued up. And so I've got these bike holders we're working on today, and I had one of them that I had the first coat of finish on, one of them that I needed to cut, and one of them that I needed to form up. And so I had each one of them in a separate stage. And so I spent a lot of time getting things ready for the recording. And then when Luke comes, it's 5 to 6 hours of just shooting videos and bouncing through all of these projects. And usually what I try and do is I try and record 3 weeks worth of video on each time that Luke's down here. Because sure shooting, one of those 3 isn't going to work out. And so I just kind of plan for that. And then that's kind of nice, because then that one that didn't work out just means that I can finish it next time. And that's what's going to happen with the pinch rods. Thankfully, Luke's actually coming back down next week because he's been gone for almost a month. And so the pinch rod, we were running into all sorts of issues, and we'll finish that up next week. But yeah, I as much as I would like to work ahead, I rarely can. Should work on that more.
You're like the most organized person I know, so.
What's next?
All right, I'm going to bump Paul's question up because of his super chat earlier. So let's see. Paul says, do you ever have days where it seems like literally everything you touch falls apart or screws up somehow? If so, do you just take the day off or power through or ...
Yeah, I do. And you know, okay, this will kind of harken back to the last question, is sometimes when something falls apart and this video has to be out Saturday, the video then becomes how to not build this. I've had several times where the project video ends in failure. And I'll just have to say, you know, this is life. Sometimes you get that project you want. And sometimes you get this pile of trash that's not worth anything and you've got to redo it. That's one of the fun things about particularly Wood by Wright, is I like to show the reality of the workshop. Everything is not perfect all the time. There are times where things don't come together. Thinking particularly, I was making a cabinet scraper once. And I was working through it, and it was just one little problem snowballed into another problem, snowballed into another problem, snowballed into another problem. By the time I got done, I had the whole thing assembled, and I had a worthless tool that wouldn't do what it needed to do because of all of these tiny little problems that all built up onto each other. And I'd spent the entire day and had nothing to show for it, and the video was live the next day. And so it was just one of those, oh well, how not to build a cabinet scraper. And then 2 weeks later we had, well, how to build a cabinet scraper, because I learned from my mistakes. And so I try and do those videos from time to time of, this didn't work out so well. Oh well, we're going to learn from it and we're going to change onto this. And particularly when I do the pinch rods, all that footage that we had, I'm going to keep in there. So anytime I'm working on something, there was a project I just did recently where I built all of it and then realized it was trash and I had to rebuild it all again. I try and put all that footage in there showing that I did this at the beginning and now I'm learning from it, and so I'm going to do it all again and I'm going to show what I learned as we go along. So the learning process is a big part of this channel.
You're so good to say your wife hasn't been the problem in the shop, even though we've built a bench together.
No, she's usually my break.
Sarah just usually mutters under her breath when she gets frustrated.
Throws things.
I don't throw things.
You throw me.
No, I tell you to just fix it.
You throw me the look.
That's true.
What's next?
Not going to deny that one. All right, let's see. Sticking with the current topic. Duane Roen wants to know, do you use mindfulness exercises to relax?
No, I have tried meditation, and my brain doesn't work that way. My best relaxation is organization. And so if I'm finding myself getting uptight about something, the best thing I can do is stop and make a list. Make a spreadsheet. That is so relaxing. When you get a spreadsheet that actually works and everything flows and all the math is functioning, it's just like, yes! It is so relaxing. And that's the way I do it. That's my mindfulness, is taking that frustration and turning it into the energy required to fix the problems that are coming. And that's what I do. Meditation and mindfulness, and they work for a lot of people, not as much for me. But I'm a weird person, so. What's next?
And it cracks me up because you're already so organized. So how you find more things to organize always?
Well, I mean, look at my shop. It's not organized. I'm mentally organized. I'm not physically organized. I think that's a... Although I've never
Can you
seen
tell
your
who's more
desk at
type A
work.
and who's more type B in this relationship?
Yeah, it was when I was a supervisor, I was the guy who, if you needed a project, you handed it to James, and 30 minutes later it's done. Because it was just, if there's a to-do list, I have to knock it all off the list. If it's not knocked off the list, it's going to drive me absolutely bonkers. I have to finish it all. And so projects get done, and they get done as fast and most efficiently as possible, which usually means I end up rushing through them and destroying something on the way.
All right. So Filipe Medeiros asked, what % of the time does woodworking or YouTubing still feel like fun versus work these days?
Well, okay. The woodworking half of the job is almost always fun. Even when Luke's here and I'm recording things, you'll notice my hands getting shaky in a video. That's because I'm really excited about this and I'm having a lot of fun. And especially when I get into carving, it's just like, oh yes. When things really start clicking and the woodworking is great, it is fun. There's very little of the actual woodworking that is work. Other than, oh stink, I've got 100 board feet of white oak that I need to thickness plane. Hey, it's a good thing I have a thickness planer. I only use the thickness planer like once a year, but it's those projects where, yeah, I could do that, but I could shoot 10 minutes worth of video of me planing, and then the next 7 hours of me planing isn't going to produce any video work, and it's not going to be fun for anyone, so I'm just going to go run it through a thickness planer. Yeah. The rest of it, the actual editing of videos, that's a chore. The social media, that's a chore. Anything with writing is just painful. Anything with reading and writing is absolutely, that's work. There's a reason I don't do blog posts anymore. My descriptions and videos are incredibly small. And I don't do anything other than what is absolutely necessary for reading and writing, because it's just, it is so much extra work that I do not find enjoyable. So I don't do that. But the actual woodworking, that's fun. This is my happy pace. Especially when I don't have a camera on. When I'm getting things set for Luke, I really have fun with that. And I look forward to those times when I can actually carve out 2-3 hours that I can just work in the shop and get a project done, and there isn't a camera on. I really cherish those. Those are fun. But yes, it is still fun when the camera's on.
Okay, I think we've gotten through all the touchy-feely questions. Now we're in shop questions.
Okay, what we got?
But I am proud of you for embracing that side of you. Let's see, Nicholas Todd. I watched your videos on movement, cupping, etc. So the question is, I get a 2x10 that has the core of the tree in the board. Could I cut off the edges and rejoin without the middle to reduce movement?
Yeah, a 2x10, I'm assuming you're talking pine. That's going to move on you no matter what you do. So I'm assuming like the board right now is this with the pith running right down the middle. So if you cut it in the middle and you take those two pieces and you glue them like this, you'll have a little bit more stable board. You'll have core on the outside that'll want to do some weird things. But theoretically, that would work. Usually the core isn't running straight down the board, it's actually kind of winding through it, and so that's not going to help you that much. But if you're wanting 2x10 or 1.5 inches by 9 1/4, yeah, you're going to be running into problems because those just aren't terribly stable. I mean, the best thing you can do is sticker it. In other words, put 3/4 inch by, here, let me grab something. Prop. 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch. This is a sticker, not a stick, a sticker. And you put this across and you put 1, 2, 3, 4, about every 2 to 3 feet apart. And then you lay your board on top of that. And then you put other stickers on top of that, on top of the stickers that are below it, so that they're paired up. And then on top of that, you put a lot of weight. And I'm talking like 200-300 pounds or more. And you let it sit for a couple months. Or however long it takes for that board to reach equilibrium in your shop. And if it's a construction lumber from the store, that might be a couple months. Or it may only be a couple weeks, depending upon the temperature and moisture. And if you have a lot of weight on there, a lot of times that can actually force it to stay relatively flat if you keep it under that constant pressure for the whole time it's drying. And you can occasionally get away with that and have a relatively stable piece. Yes, it will change a little bit over the years as humidity comes and goes, but that's good joinery can fix that. But yes, you can rip it, split the pieces back together and work on that, especially if you take them from opposites and put them back together that way. Then your volatile pieces are on the outside rather than in the middle where they can make a big difference. But yeah, if you have any specific questions on that or specifically how you're planning on using it, feel free to send me an email. I'll be glad to take a look at it. But it's amazing what a good, really heavy weighted sticker pile can do to keep lumber that is ornery flat. Now you will be introducing some tension into there, so when you cut it, it might do some weird things. But you can get away with a lot doing that. What's next?
1 second. Let's see. Brandon Chennault asked, how do you know when there are P.A.S.T meets once you become a member? I just got my membership directory in the mail today, but no further information.
Cool. MWTCA. Yes, well, there's a couple different things. If there's one local to you or within, usually it's about 2 to 3 hour drive, they will mail you an invite. Yes, actual paper mail in the mail. Some of them that are a little more progressive will actually send out an email to that list, but most of the time that's the way you get it. But if you go on the website hasn't been cleaned up recently. There's actually a listing under local meets, and you have to go, so on the main page you go to tool meets, and then you scroll down and there's a section for the national meets and there's a section for the local meets, and there's a link way down in there in the bottom that says local meets. You click on that, and then you can scroll through all the local meets, and they're organized by section. So the whole world is split up into A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so you find your section and find the meets that are there. And then you call up the local person and get their contact. And so I tend to go to meets that are outside of my area. I often go 5-6 hours to drive to it. And so that means I have to contact them and say, hey, can I get an invite to that and send you the payment for it to do it ahead of time. But most of the time, if they're within 2 to 3 hours, you will get an email and a paper being sent to you in the mail. And yes, if you're going to pay early, you still have to write out a physical check and send them a physical check in the mail None of them yet have gotten to a PayPal or anything like that. Which, actually, no, I think there was one that I saw that had PayPal. I don't remember which one it was. That was like, I don't have to write a check for it. This is so cool. So that's the only reason I have a checkbook is MWTCA meets.
If y'all have never been to an WTCA meet, there's a certain age demographic.
Yes. Yeah, before I started going to them, literally my first meet that I went to, the youngest person other than me was probably in his 60s. I'm not joking at all. Since I've been publicizing and pushing it over the last 6 years or so, there are far more people. You will find people there in their 30s and 40s now, which didn't happen before, which was kind of weird. Yeah,
You are a modern Renaissance man.
Well, don't get that confused because Shannon Rogers has a Renaissance Woodworker.
I know.
So,
He doesn't own the name.
For those of you who don't know, if you become a member of the MWTCA, which whether you go to a meet or not, it's well worth it because there's a huge amount of information on there. Particularly if you're a collector, they have a search engine on there for looking through patents and other things like that to find information about really rare things. Really cool source of information. Plus you get a quarterly, my grist mill, it's over there. I get a quarterly grist mill that gets sent and it has a bunch of collecting information. And then once a year they do a reprint of an old catalog. And you get a lot for the $25 a year. And then on top of that, then you can go to all of the meets. Because if you want to go to a meet, you have to be a member. And they do that because then they don't have to worry about taxes and association because all the sales are done inside the club. And so it becomes far easier for insurance and other things. What was I going to say? Yeah, you have to be a member. So it's well worth the $25 a year. What's next?
Let's see. DHC 1802 says, I noticed the carcass saw you use in your videos isn't the one you recommend on your website. Do you prefer the Veritas over the Lynx?
They each have their own bonuses. The ones on my website are what I generally suggest as the most cost-effective tools for the project that are easily and readily available. The Veritas is the one I grab and use all the time because it's the one I have. I do have the P.A.S.T tenon saw, which is basically the exact same thing as the Lynx. Actually, I think, was it the Lynx? Maybe it's P.A.S.T. I don't know. It's one of these. I think it's P.A.S.T that I have on there. They have a brass back, which is a little heavier than I generally like, but it's a great saw. And basically, the difference between those is personal taste. Functional-wise, they'll both treat you exactly the same. And so that's why a lot of things on there are things that I don't use, either because you can't get them anymore because I can't list antiques, or like the Veritas, those are almost impossible to find now. They are so far on back order. Yeah. Yeah, that's mainly the big reasons. But there are quite a few things on there that are like Amazon. They're not the best in the world. They're not high quality, but they're really good for the money you get, and they're a functional tool that will be a great user. Yeah, it may not have all the fit and finish of the really high quality, high finish items, but they're good tools that are designed to work. And so that's usually what I have on the suggested tools for beginners. And I do have quite a few on there that I'll have in the little description underneath. This is good for the quality. This is the best bang for the buck. And I'll have another one like, this one costs a bit more, but it's a really nice one, and that's the one I would go with. Particularly when I talk about chisels, I have the Richters. They're not my best bang for the buck chisel. For that, I think I had the Nerix regulars, if I remember correctly. No, it wasn't those. I don't remember which I have on those. So I have the best bang for the buck, and get this one, it's really, really good. But not everyone has the money up front to get the best, and you just want to get something that can get you out the door. That's one of the things I like about Lynx and P.A.S.T. They're good saws. They're really, really good for the money. They're not great on the fit and finish, and you're probably going to end up doing a little more detail work on them. Some people don't like the heavier brass back, and some people really like the heavy brass backs, and it just ends up being a personal opinion. What's next?
Let's see. Just so everyone knows, I don't know that we're going to get to any new questions at this point, except for the ones I've already pulled out. Let's see. Karl Goebeler reminds me, what would be the best wood for making molds for casting? You must have said something earlier. So what would be the best wood for making molds for casting?
Whatever wood you have on hand. I would probably want something that's diffuse porous, so you don't have the large open holes. So something like a poplar, lightweight, easy to work, be a good one, because it doesn't have to be structurally sound. It doesn't have to be really durable. Actually, pine would be pretty good for it because it's a sealed wood. It doesn't have the open pores. It's a diffuse porous wood. Poplar would probably be my first choice for most things. If I really want it to be stable and I want it to be protected and last a long time, I might make it out of maple. But pretty much anything on hand, because you're usually going to be sealing the wood and putting a finish coat on it, and sometimes even painting it so that it has a good clean surface, in which case then go ahead and use an oak, because you can fill all the pores and seal it up. So yeah, whatever you've got on hand. They each have their own pros and cons. Lightweight, go with poplar. Durable, long-lasting, go with maple. Otherwise, whatever scrap you have.
All right. Jared Wicklund asked, how do you incorporate the kids into the shop? I've got 5 of my own.
My rule is I try and encourage them all regularly with a project, and I'll say, hey, does someone want to build this? Arthur, it's almost always a no. He doesn't want to be in the wood shop. JJ, sometimes I can get him down here, but most of the time he's recently found gaming on the computer and other things, and those have gotten his attention. Melody, though, I say, you want to come build something? She's like, yeah. When they're really young, set up a good spoke shave, give them a stick in the thing and say, here, make curls. And it's amazing how much fun they're going to have just going kink, 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 and a good setup, Stanley 151. Any monkey can use it. If it's set up right, you can make curls and have all sorts of fun. I've done a couple videos on making a hand helicopter, where it spins up in the air. Kids can make those really, really quickly. Paul Sellers has a couple videos on making those too. And the most important thing is find something that interests them. A lot of times with kids, they just want to make shavings. Let them make shavings. Don't force a project on them, because then they're not going to want to do it at all. And then they're just going to have the memory of, yeah, I was forced to do that in the shop. I don't want to go back in there. There are lots of fun kids projects, and I actually have quite a few of them on my website that I have I have fans completely for. I have plans completely for free that are on there for making the kids' toolbox, making a bird feeder, making the kids' easel, paint easel that are made with Melody. Most all of the projects that I've made with Melody I have on there as free, so you can download them all. And they're really quick and easy, especially with dowel joinery. You know, you put one board into the other like a butt joint, drill a hole, pound a dowel in there, and you have a really good floating tenon joint. And those last really well. And they're kind of fun for kids because they can easily drill a hole, and they can pound a dowel in, and they can cut it off flush, and they've got a good joint. No detailed quality work for it, and any kid can have some fun with it. But make something that intrigues them. Show them a couple things. Would you like to make this, this, or this? And see if something's like, ooh, yeah, I'd really like to make that. And then jump from there. Is that another super chat?
Yes. Paul says, do you ever get tired of answering the exact same questions over and over throughout the years? I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, I do get a lot of the same questions over and over again. Like almost every video, I get a question of, do you really wear wooden clogs? Yeah. They're my shop shoes. I wear them every day. Yeah, I get a lot of the same things, but That's part of the job.
But that makes us happy. That means there's new people coming in. So.
Yeah. I think the only ones I get tired about is when I still get the same dumb comment every time, or someone trying to be funny about something that's not funny. And it's just like, no. Like today, on my main channel, I had someone comment on this box. So on the second channel, the how-to, I really talk through that I'm just having fun. I don't care if there's cracks and joints in it. I'm just making a simple box that is enjoyable for me. I'm not making fine woodworking. And someone on the main channel is like, you don't know what you're talking about. There's so many cracks in that. And it's like, well, yeah, I said there's cracks in it.
You're just not cracked up to be.
What's next?
Mom joke.
Oh, mom joke. Yeah, what do you got?
What's next?
What's next?
Talk about the same no. I asked my grandpa, how are you enjoying the new stair lift? Grandpa said, I hate it. It's driving me up the wall.
Is that JS Trucking?
Trucking and guitars.
Trucking and guitars. Now that's an interesting one.
That sounds like a
What do you
country
say?
music summary right there.
What do you say? I can't quite read it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Have you ever had to repair the lateral adjuster on your Stanley planes?
Yes. Well, you're going to have a bunch of different ones. Let me grab one that, yeah, let's grab the 5 1/4. So what happens is they often fall. And when they fall, they almost always fall in the same manner. And, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to use the second camera.
Did you?
My cord for it's upstairs.
Oh.
So often when they fall, they tend to fall this way, and you end up with an iron and a lever that are bent. And so usually when the lateral adjuster is bent, I just bend it back. When you really get into it, though, if you have one that's missing, usually at that point it's actually cheaper to get a whole new frog than it is just the lever cap, than just the lateral adjuster, because the lateral adjuster is. There are quite a few places online that will sell the frogs, and if you want to find them, first place I go to is a Facebook group called the Parts Division, and you put up a link on there of, hey, I'm looking for this, and someone on there will have it for you. If they don't, then I go down the list of online sellers on handtoolfinder.com, and every one of those online sellers has a collection of parts in their back. And a lot of them will have just the lateral adjuster. The problem is the lateral adjuster is riveted on, and when you pull it out, you usually end up destroying the rivet. And the rivet is so integral that it becomes a pain. You have to make a new rivet for it, and so all the work that's involved means just go get a new frog. And the frog is usually going to cost you just the same amount as just the lateral adjuster. Then the other problem is a lot of times the top of the frog actually breaks off. It's cast iron. In that case, you go get a new frog. So, that being said, usually when there's a problem with the lateral adjuster, getting a whole new frog is the answer, because they're readily available, and there's quite a few of them out there. Trying to think of what other problems I've had with the lateral adjuster itself. I've had sometimes where the little wheel has broken off because there's a rivet on that. But in that case, I would just go get a new frog. Because replacing that means you have to take the lateral adjuster off, which means you just destroyed that rivet. And so it's an absolute pain when anything goes wrong with the lateral adjuster. Generally, just go get a new frog. And there's quite a few places that will have antique frogs for all makes and types. Especially when you get to Stanley, if you can tell them, hey, I have a Stanley Type 12, you'll have a bunch of people who have the frog in hand. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other particular on it. But if you'd like me to take a look at it, feel free to send me an email. I'd be glad to, if there's some specific thing that I didn't mention, I'd be glad to help you out with it. What do you got?
All right, so JS gets a mom joke. You ready?
Yes.
Someone actually complimented me on my driving the other day. They left me a note on my windshield. It said, parking fine.
Yes. What's next?
You like that one? Let's see, Sumi. What did Sumi have to say? Was the how not to build a spill plane video one of your frustrating ones?
Yes. Oh man, the spill plane. Oh, where is that thing? I don't know where my oh, there, right there. This is a spill plane kit from Red Rose Productions. Red Rose Reproductions. I always forget the re because of the theater background. I love spill planes. Spill planes are just fun, and this one really threw me for a loop because there are so many little things, and you have an angle here, an angle here, and an angle here, and an angle here, and the skew, and it's skewed at an angle, and there are so many different things that can go wrong with this, and it is. Yeah, this is a really frustrating one. I actually, when I made this one, I made the video of how not to do it because it fell apart. But off camera, I made a whole nother one out of cheap pine just to make sure I was thinking through it correctly. And so that one worked out okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. And then I made this one again, and just to show I could do it. So yeah, sometimes it's all about just banging your head against a wall until it works. And I do like banging my head against a wall. I do it quite frequently. My wife will attest to that. What's next?
Keep my mouth shut. All right, Arthur. Arthur asks, what are some of the biggest changes you've made to your workflows to mitigate mistakes?
Becoming a hand tool woodworker. Machines, when something goes wrong, it goes really wrong really fast and does a lot of damage. And usually when something gets destroyed by a machine, you've got to start over and build a whole new piece. When something usually goes wrong with hand tools, most of the time, it's something you can work around. You can put in a detail. That's a good place for a butterfly. There's ways you can fix it. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Yeah, I think the main key things are what I was talking about earlier is find ways to slow down, find ways to take breaks regularly, and when you find yourself getting frustrated, be able to identify that, stop, and do something else. Find something that brings you joy, because the joy is what will bring you out of the aggravation, and the aggravation is what will lead to the dark side. Don't go down that path. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to mess-ups. What's next?
I don't know why you're quoting Gandalf, but anyways.
The reason I married you?
The Walnut Woodworker asks, I made BLO out of pure cold-pressed flaxseed oil on an open fire. I got it up to over 550 degrees, but I don't have that amber color that you have. Should this be cause for concern?
You may not have gotten it up quite high enough. Usually my temperature for a cold pressed is usually around 560, 565, maybe pushing 570. And what you'll notice is if you're looking in there, you'll suddenly see at a specific temperature, it almost looks like a spider web grows through it and then disappears. And that spider web creates a little bit of a fogginess. And that's what triggers it. And getting up close to that temperature, it will still polymerize faster. You'll have better than you will raw, but it's a specific temperature where you just got to get over that point and it suddenly clicks. It is a very Boolean temperature. But the problem is with cold pressed, that temperature isn't a set point. You can't say it's going to happen at this temperature. I usually just keep going until I see that spider web. I never let it get over 75. 575. Yeah, I never let it get over 575 because usually the the combustion temperature is about 600. 600? I have to look that up again. Yeah. So you want to stay away from that temperature. That's what makes it really fun. Pot of hot oil about ready to suddenly burst into flames on its own, and it's underneath a open flame, and it's just a lot of fun. Yeah, making your own boiled linseed oil is living on the edge. What's next?
Let's see. Jeremy R. asked, when making mortise and tenon joints, is wood movement ever a concern inside the joint?
Generally, no. Because what happens is wood movement is more important with a bigger board. Because it will expand across the board. Well, if the whole board is one homogeneous piece, the expanding is compounded. However, with a mortise and tenon, you're usually talking something that's 2, 3, maybe 4 inches wide. And the expansion and contraction on that, even outside in the great humidity, is only going to be a tiny bit. I mean, if you were really to have a high swing outside, you might have a 1/16 of an inch expansion and contraction over 4 inches. That would be really, really dramatic. For something inside, you're only going to have a few hundredths of an inch, if that. A shaving thickness of expansion and contraction. And in that case, the mortise is more than strong enough to contain that and crush the fiber back down to the size it needs to be. And so, no, mortise and tenon it's one of the nice things about it, they're small enough. Now, if you're talking about like a breadboard end, that's the reason why they break it up into small tenons, is because you don't want to have all of those moving throughout. It also makes it a little easier to cut. But with a breadboard, you pin it in the middle, and the outside then floats. You put pins throughout, but those pins have expanding joints because the whole wide table might expand and contract an 1/8 inch or more. And so in that case, you have really wide tenon, you need to have that expansion and contraction capability. But for a small stretcher, something 3 or 4 inches, no, it's well within the capability of the wood to hold that tenon and constrain its expansion and contraction. It's not like ice, where when ice expands, it will shatter 1/2 inch thick steel. No, wood can be crushed. What, we got time for one more, or are we done?
I think we're going to call it there.
Sounds
So,
good.
If we didn't get to your question, send James a message.
I answer quite a few of them quite regularly, so send that on. For those of you going to the meet in Indianapolis, looking forward to seeing you this weekend. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.